Supreme Court delivering a major blow to former President Donald Trump. In an undisclosed vote count, the High Court ruled Trump must turn over his tax records to the Democrat-controlled House Ways and Means Committee in the coming weeks before Republicans take control of the House.
Now, last month, Mr. Trump's attorneys asked the Supreme Court to block the committee from obtaining his tax records. Mr. Trump responding to the latest ruling, posting on Truth Social, quote, "Why would anybody be surprised that the Supreme Court has ruled against me? They always do. It is unprecedented to be handing over tax returns, and it creates terrible precedent for future presidents. The Supreme Court has lost its honor, prestige, and standing, and has become nothing more than a political body, with our country paying the price." The High Court has a 6-3 conservative majority. The former president appointed 3 of those justices to the court.
And joining us now to discuss is distinguished university professor at Touro University, Thane Rosenbaum, and constitutional law attorney Amir Benna. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amir, I want to start with you here. Your reaction to the Supreme Court's ruling, and are you surprised by it?
You know, I am surprised by this. You know, Chief Justice Roberts granted an administrative stay. He referred it to the entire court. That means they couldn't get 5 votes. They needed 5 votes on this in order to stay the lower court's ruling that would have directed the IRS to provide this to the House Ways and Means Committee. What's so troubling about it is that essentially they're saying that Congress, as long as they come up with some explanation for why they need tax records of a president, even if it's not the true one, even if it's a fig leaf, if it's a pretext, that they have to be turned over. And Congress now, if it's controlled by a party other than the party sitting in the Oval Office, can use those records to dig up dirt, to leak that information into the public sphere, and essentially bring the president to heel. And that is, to me, an extraordinary violation of separation of powers.
Yeah, and Thane, we talked a little about this yesterday, but when the former president says something about how it's political, when I hear that, I think, yes, by definition, Congress is political. But when it enters into the point where they're starting to ask for personal information, it kind of changes a little bit. They have to, it's been explained, as you explained, you have to have some kind of justification. And in this case, they were using the excuse that we need to understand what you have, so in the future we can make sure what we want to require of presidents. Yet he's saying, you're going on a fishing expedition.
And Bob, you don't think the Supreme Court didn't know Thanksgiving is tomorrow?
Right.
Right? Thanksgiving is tomorrow. This congressional term ends in January. So let me get this straight. They're saying that the tax documents will be submitted to the House Ways and Means Committee. They will examine it, and they will vote to pass legislation between now and January. And
right,
there's Christmas.
Exactly.
There's Christmas. Yeah. So is this really a valid legislative purpose? And also, if I were the Supreme Court, I'd be careful what I wish for, because this means their tax returns are now available. You know, this could be, you can go after any enemy you want if this is the precedent and say, we want to embarrass you. We're going to tell the whole country what your taxes are and who you're spending money on and who's paying you. Now, if you believe in complete transparency, you're saying that's great. Everyone should have that. But I'm wondering whether that's the kind of country we want to be in, where we spend our time finding new ways to attack our political enemies.
Yeah, and Amir, the former president facing other legal battles as well. A New York judge has scheduled an October 2023 trial for the former president, 3 of his adult children, and the Trump Organization in a lawsuit brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James. Now, the lawsuit accusing them of fraudulently overvaluing the real estate company's assets and Trump's net worth. This has been specifically about the organization, but again, he and the children are also included. Do you think that the tax returns could be connected to that?
Well, I do think that the tax returns are connected to that. And in fact, if you remember, the district attorney in Manhattan, in New York, had gone up to the Supreme Court to get tax returns in order to look into a criminal prosecution. They didn't find anything, but it was that information that the attorney general then took and brought into a civil complaint. And that's what this case is that you're describing. It's a civil lawsuit, and they have these records already. And so I don't think they're going to get anything new that they don't already have. But what's troubling is the Manhattan District Attorney, in light of the Supreme Court's ruling, in light of the Attorney General's case, is now trying to resurrect a criminal case against Donald Trump individually for hush money payments to Stormy Daniels, to try to argue that in some way Donald Trump was falsified business records, and they're trying to somehow get around statute of limitations and bring a criminal prosecution. I mean, the persecution against this former president is just unbelievable. It's nothing that any of us have witnessed in our lifetime.
Thane, we'll ask you to wrap this up. Of all these actions out there, legal actions against the former president, is there a theme you see here? What's your observation we should think about?
Well, they come from so many different directions, Bob. I mean, but what's really interesting, if you're not watching Newsmax and you're watching any of the other cable news stations, you're really not hearing the defenses that the president has to a number of these cases. So, for instance, in the documents case, the classified documents case, I've been reading everywhere you talk about it, the president is clearly guilty of possessing documents that were created during his presidency. No one is talking about the Presidential Records Act, which would have entitled him to have some documents and be in a conversation with the National Archives about what he could keep. No one's talking about that the Espionage Act usually applies to enemies of the state and not to presidents that are merely keeping documents in their sock drawer. Mm-hmm. It's only on Newsmax, really, that you hear, like Amir, you hear people like Amir actually giving you a much broader understanding of what these cases really contemplate. It's really remarkable to me that you really need to watch Newsmax in order to get that news, because you won't. In every other context, the president is guilty.
Okay, can we get that clip?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Then you said, there's an ad right there. Amir Benno, thank you. Thane, thank you. Professor Rosenbaum, there was no class this afternoon, right? I mean, that was
Bob, I'm wishing you and Katrina a happy Thanksgiving. Katrina, say hi to your mom.
Oh.
And Bob, I will see you next week in class, because the class loves you, and they love it when you're sitting beside them.
Yes. Thank goodness they give me the notes. That's all I got to say. Thank you, Thane.
Happy
and
Thanksgiving.
Amir. Yes,
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.